Welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown, the podcast where we watch scary movies so you don't have to.
From award-winning to completely unknown, we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Solange Hummel.
Now, warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously as we take these movies seriously.
It's a snow day here at the Hamumu home where the horror hoedown happens.
Oh, that was some hefty alliteration. We have not had hefty snow, though.
No, we have had 0% snow. There was some rain yesterday. There's ice on everything, and it's boring.
I'm so sorry.
It's not the snow day I was after.
Well, was this movie the movie you were after?
We'll find out during the ratings. Because it was a snow day, we were eating grilled cheese and tomato soup when we started this movie up.
We were.
And immediately, the movie clearly represented tomato soup as blood.
Well, there was the transition. Like, this movie, more than possibly any movie we've watched in, like, the recent history, started with gore.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Our movie is called Saint Maud from 2020. I thought I should probably mention that, since we didn't actually do so when we were recording the podcast.
And honestly, it was some of the only gore in the whole movie, was this opening scene of, I don't even know what happened there, was a mess in this, like, some kind of room in a hospital. I don't know if it was a morgue or a treatment room or an emergency room, like a surgery room. I don't know. But it was one of those ones where there was, like, blood dripping from hanging hair, which is always a bad combination.
Yeah, because then you got to wash your hair.
Sure, that's what I meant.
I thought so.
But then it transitioned, like from that scene, it immediately transitioned to an extreme close-up of tomato soup, which was upsetting a little.
It was tasty, though.
Was it?
Yeah, I liked it.
It's because I added red pepper flakes.
To the blood?
That too.
Oh. One of my notes says blood.
Blood?
I don't think I meant that. I don't know. I don't know what that means. Here's the thing about that scene.
Which scene?
The opening scene.
The opening scene.
I don't know if you caught the little moments, because my interpretation of what happened, this was the event that kind of got her kicked out of the hospital. Like, they wanted to cover up her existence and, like, forget about her because she's dangerous and weird.
Right.
And it turned her life around because she became Saint Maud after this. She became hyper-religious and messed up.
Right.
What appears to have happened, based on really quick flashes later in the movie, and doesn't make sense to me, is that she worked in, like, palliative care at this hospital. And so there was, like, an old lady, you know, fragile thing, who she had to do chest compressions on. And she didn't just crack her ribs, she, like, smashed her chest open. And I don't know if that really happened, but
like,
that scene suggests it did. Yeah. And that was horrifying.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, can you draw blood that way? You'd have to, like, Superman punch through their chest.
I mean, yeah, it was like if that woman had been made out of crepe paper and rice crackers.
Yes. To put in your soup.
Yes. Crepe paper, rice crackers, and tomato soup.
Yeah. It was very much like that, actually.
Ew.
Yeah, I wouldn't want crepe paper in my soup.
No, and it makes me wonder, because Maud was also extremely sick. Like, I spent most of the movie trying to diagnose what was going on with her, because she starts out like she's talking about how she's been having these stomach problems and she's drinking milk of magnesia. And then later, like, she's vomiting and...
Well, she also drank a lot.
She did, but I don't think that's what that was. Like, I think there was something going on with her stomach where she had, like, I don't know if it was massive ulcers or what was going on, but she definitely was having stomach problems. And then she was also having seizures and hallucinations, which, I mean, I've watched enough television to know that combination generally means some kind of brain tumor.
Yeah. Also, she got bloody noses out of the blue.
See, so there were all of these things that she was interpreting as like trials and visions and whatnot that made me wonder, what is she dying of?
Yeah.
Like, I thought she had some kind of cancer also, and that maybe she was going to discover that as she was caring for this woman who had spinal cancer, and like there would be a whole thing. But I don't know that she ever really discovered what was going on with her.
Yeah, I don't think so. She didn't really need to in the end, but...
No, well, that's true. But so to go back to the scene you're talking about, though, like maybe she killed this woman by like crushing her ribs or whatever, but that the pushing her hands through her chest into her lungs and heart, like that was a hallucination brought on by whatever like brain tumor or whatever is going on in her head.
That makes sense because it doesn't seem possible.
No. But then, like, she interpreted all of those seizure type things as being God coming close to her.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense that, you know, she talked about feeling pulsing energy and like that was God. And really that would be a symptom of whatever's going on in her brain.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I guess the most interesting aspect to this movie for me was how... like, it really made me think about how often throughout history people have had visions or, you know, other things, like have had these hyper-religious experiences. And it really made me wonder, from where I stand as not really believing in any of those things, like how many of those hyper-religious experiences that people have come from something going on in your brain.
Yeah. There's some kind of actual a thing, you know, that religious people go to church and, you know, all the choir music happens and they feel heavenly at church. Like, you know, in this group, hearing a sermon, having the music, there's like some sort of feeling that comes from that. I forget what they call it, but like a divine feeling. And that is measurably like some kind of something that happens in your brain. And there are, I think psilocybin triggers that. Like, so you take it and you feel like, oh, now I understand God. Another interesting thing about that has nothing to do with this movie, the idea that you are an entity, that you are seeing out of your eyes and you are just you.
Okay.
I think it's psilocybin, magic mushrooms, that takes that away. It removes that feeling. So that's why people talk about, oh, I'm connected to the world and we're all one. It's because all that is like a feeling. There's no reason why you are just you. Like, that's just a perception.
Interesting.
It's weird.
That's very interesting. Well, this movie, and when I think about that concept of like your brain doing things and then, you know, how we interpret that, whether it becomes a religious thing or, you know, there's a lot of ways that our brains interpret the things that happen inside them that, you know, become interesting stories, I guess. But it always makes me think of Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
Because I had, like, when I was
appropriately.
when I was in high school, I had kind of this little obsession with Joan of Arc. Like, I thought she was such a fascinating character. She was a human, like she was a real person, but like who she was and how she moved it through the world and what she became because of those things was just fascinating to me, especially when I would think about the fact that we won't ever know why she felt the things that she felt. Like, was she being touched by God? I don't know. Was she experiencing a brain tumor? I don't know. Like, did she have some sort of seizure disorder that
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Well, and that's what I was saying with the church thing. Like that feeling, you know, in addition to coming from appropriate sources like being at church, can be triggered by seizures and things like that. And that's why people get some of these weird ideas that, oh, when my dog talks to me, that's the voice of God talking through him. It's not just because they're having a weird idea. It's because they're actually feeling heavenly, magical feeling at the time.
Sure.
It's kind of strange.
You think about how often people who had seizure disorders, like historically before they were understood as a brain thing, like how often those people were either honored or vilified as being closer to God because they had those feelings.
Or they were possessed by the devil.
Well, you know, yeah. Somehow being more connected to the supernatural,
one way
spiritual
or the other.
elements. But this movie, like, definitely had a lot of that hinted throughout it. It didn't talk about it overtly necessarily. In fact, it, like, not just necessarily, it didn't talk about it overtly. It avoided that overtly because she believed that she knew what was going on, and it was that God was talking to her and testing her.
But it was also presented, I think, really clearly that it was seizures and all in her head. I mean, you could consider it otherwise, but I think it was pretty obvious.
I mean, here's the thing, though. It's pretty obvious to interpret it that way from your perspective, from my perspective, because we don't believe that the other perspective is real, and we do believe that this perspective is real. And I think that it would be very easy for, you know, somebody who had like strong religious beliefs to watch this movie and get a completely different story from it.
I mean, that is possible for someone to do, but I think the movies, you know, when I say it's very obvious what it's doing, I think that's the intent. Like how at the end, this movie ends with her immolating herself, and it's very heavenly until there's a flash of what's really happening and she's just burning.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that's kind of, they're like,
sure,
this is all normal stuff. It's just she misunderstands it.
Right. It's from Maud's perspective, but you're saying that the character of Amanda, who does not believe and who sees what Maud is doing the same way that we do, that she's more the character, or she's more the voice of the actual author.
Yeah, I think so, because you get things like when Maud is having some of these seizures, she'll be like foaming at the mouth and stuff, and it'll cut from that to weird stuff like she's floating in the air.
Right.
But it's also clearly showing the normal version of it, what's really going on.
Yeah. Huh.
Which presents the kind of cardinal problem with this movie, or bishop problem, or pope problem.
I see what you did there. A little religious wordplay.
It was, exactly. Which is that the plot of this movie, you can boil it down real small, is that Maud thinks she's talking to God, and she kills a lady and sets herself on fire. I mean, that's kind of all that happens for the entire course of the movie. It's a character study. There's, you know, more to get out of it than that, but there's nothing to the plot, you know?
Yeah. It was definitely a character study kind of movie. And in that way, it reminds me of the one that we watched at Christmas time with the guy who thought he was Santa.
Yeah.
And like, it was that same sort of thing where I know that there are people who enjoy that kind of thing where they're just learning about a person. And I was bored to tears. I'm just like, oh my gosh, can something please happen? Like literally anything. I take so many notes on the things that happen in movies because I want to remember them. I know I don't trust myself to remember them. So I take all the notes. Anytime something happens, I make a little note about it. This movie has less than 1 page of notes for me. I typically average 2, maybe 3 pages of notes.
Yeah.
And it boiled down to almost nothing. There was some interesting interplay between Amanda, who is the palliative care patient, and Maud, and like Maud not being able to accept the lifestyle that Amanda has as she knows she's dying, and she's just like doing whatever she wants to do. She's like, I'm going to live my life right now because this is all I have left.
Yeah.
But aside
and Maud
from
was
that,
like, no, you got to get right with God.
Yeah. And aside from that, like, I don't know, it didn't have much for me.
Yeah, there was actually, that's the one really big note I took, was where Amanda has this woman who I assume is a prostitute named Carol who comes and visits her, and they do whatever they do. And
Oh, we saw some of what they did.
yeah, Maud saw too, which is inappropriate. And then Maud ends up like pulling Carol aside and being like, you have to get out of here, never come back, because, you know, you're messing up her transition to being angelic and wonderful that I'm definitely succeeding at.
Right. That is happening in my head, but nowhere else.
And in that scene, it's like there's two different things going on. And on the one hand, she actually says something like, I see how you look at her. And like she makes it clear, you know, this is not a bigotry thing. I'm not having a problem with what you're doing. I'm just saying you don't care about her. And I do, and I'm going to send you away because I don't want anybody to be bad to her during these last days. Like, this is, and it felt like a really nice thing.
Not even so much to be bad to her, but just, I don't want anyone preventing her from reaching the levels that she needs to reach in order to have the best afterlife.
Well, and that's like the other side of it. That's the positive side is, she's my friend. I don't want you around her because you're not nice to her, even though you're acting nice to her. It's clear you're just using her. But on the other side, what she's doing is I'm uplifting her toward heaven, and I can't have your sinful ways around, and that's dark and bad.
Okay, so I'm her friend and I don't want people who are going to hurt her around her, and I see how you look at her piece. From what I saw, Carol, the sex worker, like really liked Amanda and was there for like positive reasons. Yeah. Like was really legitimately there to make her last days better.
Doing a job.
And so it's ironic that like she has that Maud thinks she has that other piece to her where she's like, I'm protecting her last days, when she's actively not. She's like isolating her from everyone.
That's something, the whole isolation, indoctrination, it's like a cult kind of thing, you know, keep everyone away who's going to mess with the plan and stuff like that. And she thinks she's getting somewhere with it, but all of that is hallucination. And probably her thought that Carol was looking at her badly was also hallucination.
That's possible too. Yeah. Because it was very clear. There's a scene where she like is trying to share, or, you know, she's experiencing the warmth of God, and she's sitting there with Amanda. And like Amanda starts like imitating her and doing what she's doing. And Maud thinks, oh, you know, you feel it too. And Amanda's like, yeah. But it was very clear that Amanda was just faking it. Yeah. Whether to like offset some awkwardness around this woman who's like sort of looking like she's having an orgasm thinking about God. Or whether she's doing it in more of a mocking way. I don't know. Because
it was unclear.
I thought Amanda was more interesting than Maud, because Amanda was like dealing with these end of day things. And she's on one hand doing the whole like, just live your life. Life is short. Do the things you love. I'm going to smoke cigarettes and have sex and have my friends hang out with me all the time. And on the other hand, she was angry that she was dying because she was only 48 years old, and she was angry that she had lost the use of her legs. Yeah. And she took that out on Maud sometimes. And I sort of felt like that moment where she was pretending that she also felt it had that like razor edge to it, where she was really making fun of Maud. The only reason that razor edge didn't actually cut Maud was that Maud didn't realize it was there. Yeah.
She was like, thought things were going her way, which most of the time she did.
Yeah. And then that razor edge kind of culminates during her birthday party, where she finally, you know, Carol comes back. She has a bunch of her friends over, and Amanda is very pointedly saying, I know what you tried to do. This is not okay. And turned it into making fun of Saint Maud.
In front of everybody.
Right. To the point where Maud snaps and slaps her and like sets the whole ball rolling, and her getting fired, and, you know, her like crisis of faith where she doesn't feel God for a while.
Yeah. And that scene where she's at the party being made fun of and everybody's like surrounding her and getting in her way and everything, that felt totally like the movie Carrie. And she looks like Carrie too. And it was just this whole movie has to be inspired by Carrie. Like there's so much connection to it. Like you said, that set off another thing, but there was a lot of that in the movie where when the movie first started getting underway, I'm like, okay, things are building up to something, you know, like when she goes and works for a man, I'm like, all right, what's the conflict going to be here? And every time things started to ramp up to something was going to happen, sometimes something did happen, but it was very minor. And then they just settle way back down. Like there, when she got fired, she goes back home to her little apartment and she's in her apartment and it's just like, blah. And then later, some other huge thing happens. I think it's when she has her seizure again. So yay, God is back, I guess.
Yes.
And it goes from there to her just sitting around. It kind of ramps up, like you can hear the music crescendo and then we cut to boring nothing.
Yeah. The pacing was interesting in that way. I don't want to say bad because I think it's just a different way of storytelling than what I am used to and what I enjoy, I guess. But yes, it definitely was doing a lot of like building up and then completely cutting back, and you'd have to wait for that build up again.
And then in the end, there was a climactic moment, which was quite climactic, but it didn't resolve anything. It didn't much.
I mean, it kind of did for her.
It resolved her life one way or the other.
But I think it also, it resolved her issue with Amanda, although not necessarily the way she wanted it to be resolved.
Yeah.
But I think, as much as she was maybe wouldn't have chosen to have killing Amanda as the thing she needed to do, I think she also was like, okay, well, that was the thing God needed me to do. Now I have passed the test. Now guy. I can go home, basically, was kind of how she, her response to that. Because there's a way to look at what happened where she kills Amanda and then she goes and gets a bunch of fuel, goes out to the beach, sets herself on fire, right? That seems like, oh, crap, look what I've done. I'm going to be punished for this. I'm going to avoid that punishment by killing myself. But that didn't feel like what was happening at all.
That's not what was happening.
She didn't seem to have
She had
regret.
angel wings.
Right. She didn't regret what had happened. She was like, okay, I have paid whatever price. I have passed whatever test. Now I can go home and I will be accepted into the arms of God, which, she has her wings, she's on fire, everyone on the beach is bowing down to her.
They all bow.
There's this grand moment, and then that just flicker of the panic and her screaming, that flash of reality.
Yeah.
Which I'm so glad that they did that, because if that 1 second fraction of a second hadn't been at the end of the movie, it would have been a complete failure to me. But that one flash of nope, she felt reality at the right at the end.
I just wanted to punish her.
I mean, I guess I kind of did. That she didn't just get away with it.
Yeah, it is worth noting that when she killed Amanda, she thought what she was seeing was that Amanda was possessed by the devil and was like, ha ha ha, I got you. I managed to make you doubt your faith and fall apart. And she murdered her and defeated the devil. So good job.
She killed the demon and then was like, oh, but now there's this body full of holes here.
Yeah.
The vessel that was holding the demon is also dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was a lot there. And it's interesting. Now I'm sitting here thinking, because you're like, oh, you wanted her punished. And I'm like, I did. But that feels gross because she clearly was unwell.
Yes.
Physically and mentally, she was not okay. And so when I really think about it, no, she did not need to be punished. I did not want her to die in a fire on the beach. But there is that childlike sense of justice in me that was like, okay, she got what she she knew at the end. She knew, which is gross, and I am not proud of that.
Now we've delved into your psyche. And that is kind of what this movie did for me, was like, it was a lot of, like, I didn't feel like it was an interesting movie. I didn't enjoy it. The plot was so basic because it was a character study. We were just supposed to be interested in what was going on with her. But it made me think about tons of things, like whether they were related to the movie or not. I just kind of set my brain into different directions because it was full of ideas, I guess. And, you know, I don't know. It was a thoughtful experience, if not an interesting, entertaining one.
Yes. So now that's a thing that I want to talk about then. I feel like watching this movie and some of the movies we've watched recently have reinforced this idea that I am not about the esoteric entertainment.
Yeah.
I see the value of it. Like, I get that this movie is probably a higher quality movie in terms of a lot of things than most of the things that I watch.
Yeah, it was fancy. It's for smart people.
And well done. And smart, exactly. Like, it's supposed to make you think about things and like feel feelings and
yes.
Navel gaze. It's supposed to trigger navel gazing, which as a society or culture, or maybe even humanity wise, like, I don't even know, it's not necessarily an American thing, but like humans have kind of evolved to this place where navel gazing is the goal.
Is it?
Well, okay. This is kind of complicated and I'm working it out as I'm saying it. So it's not going to, it probably won't end up making any sense at all. But here's the thing. When we started out, humans, it was all about survival, right?
Yes.
Like, it was all about get the food, get the warmth, don't break any bones because you probably die. Like, it was all about that. And then we developed technology and skills and group society and all of these things that make it possible for us to be more efficient in those tasks. And so survival is no longer the ultimate goal. Like, we evolved past that, right?
Yeah.
We discovered like, oh, once you have all the survival things and there's still time left over, then there's like art and music and thinking. And the ultimate goal of being a successful human becomes not just surviving, but like getting to the point where you then can sit around and think or art or create or whatever, right?
Watch TV.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
Then we continued becoming efficient and creating capitalism, which then creates extreme efficiency for some based on utilizing the hours and energy of others, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, it's gross, but that's what we've done, right? Like, there are people who now have all of the time because they've moved past that need to do things for themselves because they now have this thing we created called money, which they can then just pay other people to do all the things, right?
Yes.
By they, I mean us, you and me, are very much in that space, right?
Yeah.
And when you have so much time, even the arting and the creating and the thinking doesn't take up enough of the time. And then you fill that time with just filler, because we have also created things for distraction, to distract the people who are overworked and might decide to revolt against the idea.
We don't want them thinking at all.
That they should do all of the work while other people have all of the free time. Like, we've distracted them, but then we also use that same distraction because it's not satisfying to live a life of just leisure. Like, we're not built for that. And it becomes like, it messes with our brains. So then we kind of disconnect from all of those like feelings of this isn't enough. What more do I want? Blah, blah, blah. And then we end up just all watching TV all the time. And it's nothing but, Married at First Sight.
Great.
Yeah. So most of us are in that place, right? But then I think we're at a turning point. I think we're evolving to the next level where we actually start recognizing that that is not okay, that that's not good for our brains, for our bodies, or for our communities. And then we then reach that point where like the people who just navel gaze, the people who consider themselves successful because they have gotten to the point where they don't have to do anything, are no longer the successful ones. The successful ones are the ones who are at that point, have that ability, but then are like, you know what? Instead of navel gazing or distracting myself from the fact that navel gazing all the time is not actually satisfying for my brain, I am going to take all of this free time I have accumulated and do something to help others with it. And so we've come back around to the idea of service to community and service to others in a way that I think is interesting and is progressive. It's not regressive. It's not going back to the time when we had to work together because that was the only way to survive. We've moved past that, but then we've reached a point where we're like, oh, it is the only way to survive, but in a very different way. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Well, I would say that there are also those of us who have evolved to that point who, instead of filling that time with service to others, are saying, I have all the free time in the world. I'm going to spend it working to make more money so that I just have the most money of all the money.
There is that. There is definitely
that. That's a whole thing.
I guess that's the other way you can go when you realize that doing nothing is not very satisfying. You're like, oh, I was more satisfied when I was working and accumulating. So I'm going to go back to doing that again.
And then my number will get bigger.
Yes. Life has become one big cookie clicker.
Yeah, for Elon.
Yeah. Although I will acknowledge that what I have described feels very much like me also saying I'm the best, because that is kind of what I have learned. So, maybe I'm just...
Well, I think you're right about that.
Rather than using words like evolved and whatnot, I'll just say like different approaches, perhaps.
I mean, this is the overall arc. That is definitely what humanity has done. Gone from pure survival to leisure time to filling that time with activities or distractions. Those are your kind of your options. And when I think about universal basic income, people are so mad that someone can make money and then they won't do anything, and they're wrong. That's not how human brains work. People will try to make more money than you get from the universal basic income because it's not enough to get all the stuff you want. It's only to keep you alive. So you're going to do more. Because
when you reach that point, and, obviously I'm speaking from personal experience at this point, and my sample size of 1, possibly 2, if I consider what I've observed in you, is not scientifically sound, but there's a recovery period. When you reach the point where you're like, oh, I have enough. I don't have to scramble to survive anymore. There's a recovery period that involves being like, screw it. I'm not going to do anything. I don't have to do anything. I'm done. Like, I am opting out of all of this hard work nonsense. It's a significant period of time as you re-establish in your brain what it is that actually makes you happy. But I think you actually have to take the time to realize, A, doing nothing is not making me happy.
Yeah.
And B, figure out, okay, what is the thing that makes me happy? Like, do I want to be writing? Do I want to be working out in the world with people? Do I want to be creating something that I, then put out into the world? Like, how am I going to go about interacting? And so if and when, I hope when, but if we ever do start to use like a universal basic income kind of a thing, we're really going to have to struggle through that first, probably 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Of people actually not working. Because when you reach that point.
The big problem with it won't be the people not working. It will be the people screaming about it and saying, this has failed. Nobody's working anymore, which they're doing right now, by the way.
Right. Even though people are desperately working to survive.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It will be the people who cannot let go of that old mentality and are like, look at all of these people just sitting around doing nothing. The economy is collapsing, even though that's not what will happen.
No.
It won't matter what's happening reality wise around them. It will only matter what they think is going to happen.
Well, and it's such a massive fundamental change to everything about our society that it's going to be very hard. It's going to not work the first time, I think. But we'll work on it.
I mean, yeah, I have my doubts that we will ever be able to get to that point, because it truly will take decades of adjusting and figuring it out and allowing people to realize, oh, okay, I don't have to scramble, but I also don't want to just lay in bed all the time
eating mac and cheese, because that's all I can afford.
So, what am I going to do? It'll take time. And having been in the education system, I can see that people do not allow revolutionary ideas to take time they want things to change immediately. And when they don't, they go right back to the drawing board the next year and are like, no, well, we have to fix this. This didn't solve all of our problems in 9 months, It's ridiculous.
For sure. And then the sad thing is, it's literally just that 5 to 10 years, because after that, everybody else is born into this world.
Right.
And they're living that life from childhood, and they're like, everything's covered. I can dream as big as I want. What do I want to do? What do I want to be?
And
it's amazing.
Those people would be told about, like, their grandparents would talk about how, I had to work 40 hours a week minimum in order to do blah, 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 blah. And it'll sound like my dad telling me he had to walk uphill both ways through the snow to get to school. It will be so unfathomable at some point that it will just, it'll feel ridiculous. But yeah, it'll take something dramatic to get us to that point.
And all of this is exactly what Saint Maud is about.
Well, I was actually going to tie it back together when I was saying, like, it won't matter to those people who are unhappy what's really going on. They will only see what they think is going on. They will only recognize what's happening in their heads. And that is very much like Maud. Maud only saw what was happening in her, I suspect, tumor-ridden brain.
Yeah.
So tie it all back around.
Which, tying that around to Amanda, well, Amanda was telling Maud right before she got possessed that she didn't understand what it was like to be dying of cancer, and that, this is an experience that is hard to go through, and these are the difficulties. But maybe Maud had her own experience of that sort going on. I don't know.
Sure. Well, that actually makes me think that, like, Amanda is kind of like that person on the other side of the rat race mentality, right?
Yeah.
Getting, she's out of it. She knows that she's no longer a part of that push. And she can either be miserable and die, or she can find her moments of joy and die.
Yeah.
Like, she knows that that's the reality. And I wonder if there's going to be a point in, at a species level where we get past that, like, frantic need to survive and avoid death at all costs, which, when I think about it, that's what religion feels like to me, is this, like, desperate attempt to avoid death, or to pretend that it's not the end.
Or it's just a reaction to the fear of death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, if we will maybe get over that at some point and just be like, well, we just find the moments that bring us joy and satisfaction and completion, and then we die.
That's how it goes.
And that if we can accept that, then maybe we don't have this need to, like, collect all of the things, way more of the things than we could possibly use, because we really, as a species, are hoarders.
Yeah, we are. It's a mess out there.
It is a mess out there. Now I am both pleased and vaguely annoyed that this movie has made me navel gaze for several minutes.
It was several. Yeah, that's how I felt during the movie. So now you understand my feelings. Was like, mainly because the movie, I was like, whatever, what's happening there? Let me think about something.
Yeah, I felt bored during the movie, but I took the distraction route and definitely was, like, doing my, on phone coloring app while I was watching the movie.
I was paying attention.
Not only that, I got up and went and did the dishes.
Well,
during
but you can see the
second
TV from dishes.
No, I know, but usually I can't do anything else while I am watching a movie for the podcast because I have to take notes.
Yeah.
And this one, it got to a point where I was like, yeah, I don't need to take notes on this.
Yeah.
Nothing is happening.
And that's why rating this is challenging, because it is a very well-made movie that obviously is dealing with a lot of big stuff, and it's got a lot of ideas. It just doesn't have a lot of content, a lot happening. So I'm sure that this is a great movie in terms of greatness, whatever that is. But that doesn't mean I enjoy it. Like, I don't want to see this again. It's just not interesting. And I think we've seen, like, Christmas Evil that you were mentioning, where it's just a character study of this guy being Santa Claus. That was obviously much less quality of a film. That was cheesy and dumb, but it also was a better movie, like, as a movie. Like, and the thing is...
Wait, better than Saint Maud?
Yeah. Like, as a piece of entertainment, like, I found myself more interested, and I think it did a better job of telling a story. There was more happening, and they could have done that here. Like, they could have had us thinking about these big issues while Maud actually does something instead of doing nothing. And I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I really like philosophical, smart entertainment, but I like it to be easy philosophical and smart. Like, I like The Matrix and Fight Club, where I'm like, this is making me think about things, and they're punching each other. You know, like, that's what I like. And this is just thinking. You're supposed to process and feel depressed and be horrified. And I don't know. That's just not for me.
Yeah.
So I hate to rate it low just because I can tell, like, this is award-winning kind of greatness that I don't appreciate. But I'm going to rate it based on my thingies, how my brain works, the hallucinations that I have.
Yes.
And in my vision, the Lord has come to me and said that this movie deserves 3 ceiling cockroaches out of 5, which is higher than I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very low, but it's up because it was a fairly good experience. Like, as you can tell, we had a lot of thoughts because of it, and that's great. It's great to think. So, yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it as a watch, but it got me thinking.
I think that there are many reasons why people watch film entertainment, right? Like, I think you, we are people who watch movies and television shows for the release, the distraction, we think so much in our regular lives that we're stepping away from thinking and going just away, right?
Yeah.
It's for fun. It's for the ease of it.
Yes, but I don't actually like to go away from thinking. It's like I like doing Sudokus and, games where you have to think, you have to solve stuff. But it's so much easier than the thinking and solving that real life requires. It's like it exercises those same muscles, but easy.
Low stakes.
And this is not easy.
Yes. A lot of my family members who are in the generation above me seem to approach watching television and movies this way, where it's about the educational aspect of it. It's about what they're learning, what they're getting, how they're bettering themselves. I'm not trying to better myself when I'm watching TV. If I'm watching TV, I am actively not bettering myself. Like, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, you're taking a break.
But like that they, my aunts and uncles and parents and grandparents and all of them, like, they watched TV to watch documentaries to learn about historical events or to learn about people or to watch these kinds of award-winning movies that make you think about things. I remember being fairly young. I mean, I must have been in high school when there was a movie, a Russian movie called Burnt by the Sun that came out and was like...
It sounds great already.
Oh my gosh. It was the most depressing thing. I don't remember anything about it other than it was just horrifically depressing.
Yeah,
Terrible things happening to people despite, it was just awful. And my parents thought it was amazing. And I'm like, I get it. There is something here. There is a quality here. But isn't the world depressing enough already? Like, come on. And that has never changed for me. Like, I see the value and I just don't. I'm not interested. Like, that's not what I want to add to my world. Or I will do it, but in very intentional ways. Like, this is the kind of movie I would watch, like, taking a class to delve into philosophy and how humanity has evolved over time, right? Like, there's a thing to be learned from it, but I would need to be in the mindset of I want to learn a thing, not I want to be entertained.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it 3 ceiling cockroaches out of 5 as well, for the exact same reasons that you did. I did not enjoy this as a 3. I probably would have rated it more like a 2. But I also think, like, it deserves probably a 5 because there was a lot going on there and it was well done and so much quality, and I'm just a heathen who can't appreciate it.
We don't know nothing about nothing.
No.
And we want to keep it that way.
Exactly. And also I've grown tired of sitting and thinking about how things should be better. I did that a lot. And now I'm just like, you know what? That didn't accomplish anything. So I'm not going to sit and think about things for much anymore. I've done that. I'm going to, like, find things to be done and do them and hope that might make more of a change.
It does make more of a change than sitting and thinking, for sure.
Fight the horror of a world gone mad.
So for my hot political tip, I'm going to refer you back to this entire podcast where I kind of, like, decided that humanity needs to evolve in a different direction and take a new step. But also, I'm going to tie in the whole physical mental health thing. And, this movie was all about people with cancer and with mental health issues. And I don't even know what all was going on with some of them. But I do know that in order for our world to be a better place, people need to be able to get treatment for the illnesses, brain or body, that they have. In order for that to happen, we need to stop treating healthcare as if it is a commodity that can be held hostage for exorbitant amounts of money.
Yeah, if Maud had been paid attention to, if people had been monitoring her health, they would have really realized that there was something very wrong with her and put her somewhere safe and taken care of her.
Yes. And that goes what I'm calling for is something far beyond, like, expanding Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act or even, like, single payer healthcare. Like, those are all things that are still based on the idea that healthcare is something that you can withhold from someone if they can't repay you.
That's not right.
No, that is completely unacceptable. And I understand that the more elaborate our healthcare system gets, the more we have learned how to do, like, extreme, almost miraculous things to recover people from things that they otherwise would have died from. I get it. It's expensive. It takes a lot, but also either we all have those things or none of us have those things is my take on that. You shouldn't get to live longer and through more just because you have hoarded more of the resources and kept them away from the rest of humanity. That's gross.
Yeah.
So, fair. Overthrow capitalism, overthrow healthcare system, upend the entire way we see the world. That's what I think we should do.
We call for revolution once again. Viva la revolution.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.
But in the meantime, if you're in Texas, advocate for the expanding of Medicaid and for making maternal healthcare and Medicaid access go for 12 months instead of the 2 months that they are pretending is 6 months.
That sounds familiar. All right. Well, we'll see you next time with a less depressing film. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Don't forget to call your elected representatives. Ruth Ann, ma'am, do you mind?
No, she doesn't mind.
We're having a conversation here.
So is she. She's in the conversation.
Miss Ruby.
You never do that. That's not a thing you do. Why are you doing it now?
You know, our listeners are not going to believe you when you say she never does that because it is a thing she does every time we're recording.